Welcome to my dream garage build. Welcome to my dream garage build. Okay, well I can only assume that me in the future has taken issue with the use of the word dream. Maybe I'll rebrand this. The best garage that I can build given the space, time and money that I have available to me. Yeah, let's call it that. Because in reality, if I was going to build my dream garage, it would be a frigging warehouse full of Defenders, which I'm not going to be able to fit into this space. So I'm at the stage where I need to decide, where do I want to put it and how big does it need to be? And for how big does it need to be, I need to fundamentally answer the question, how many Land Rovers I want to put inside and do I want a lift? So I've broken this video up into chapters and you can dive into the chapters down below, and please leave your comments because I'm very green at this entire process. So I'm going to need a lot of advice before I embark on this journey. So this is my garden. Basically, it was one of the main reasons for buying the house, is I wanted a garden big enough that my requirements were that I could turn a Defender around on my own land and I could get access to that from the public highway. A lot of houses you see might have big gardens, but they're semi-detached and you can't actually get a vehicle into the back garden, for example. But here, I've got about 40 metres of road frontage on the front there. So that gives us a lot of flexibility here for building a garage. So I'm kind of thinking somewhere over here. This land is divided into two titles of land. This is the original garden with the house, and this is a piece of land that was bought, that was a field behind the property, bought over 10 years ago. So these are basically two different titles of land. Now the size of garage I want to build, I'm thinking 9 by 7 metres, enough to get 2 Defenders in. So that's going to be 63 square metres. So basically the fact that it's going to be to the side of the house and larger than 30 square metres, permitted developments right out. So I'm going to have to go to the planning route. There is a factor here where a lot of people fall foul of the fact that if you buy a plot of land that used to be a field or is a field, technically that land stays as agriculture and it limits what you're able to do with it in future. So a lot of people fall foul of that, turning it into a garden, putting in a summer house, that kind of stuff. This has been more than 10 years though, which I think means that the council cannot serve a legal notice on you if you do use it for anything other than agriculture. So I think that's kind of out. But in any case, applying for planning, if they agree with it fundamentally, putting a garage on this plot of land, then it should be okay. I did originally want it a bit closer to the house, which would kind of be putting it into this kind of area. However, this plot of land has got restrictive covenants, which I friggin' hate. Restrictive covenants basically says if I'm going to build an outbuilding on this plot of land, I need to get permission from the original builder of the house, which frustrates me a lot. Fundamentally, what I do want to do with this garage, there's obviously all the reasons for building a garage, but two of the main considerations for having a garage. One is I want to rebuild my Defender, and if I'm going to rebuild my Defender, I don't want it to live outside after it's rebuilt and then watch it slowly corrode. I don't believe you can keep a Defender in the UK in good condition without covering it or enclosing it, keeping it out of the elements. So I fundamentally believe that I need to, if I'm going to own Defenders long term in the UK, I need them to be inside. So if I'm going to rebuild, I want it to be there kept inside. So getting the garage for me is a requirement before rebuilding my Defender, which is long overdue. Second reason is I have lived for 13 years with my Defender being visible from the public highway, and it is nerve-wracking to drive around the corner to your house and your heart skips a beat. The moment you look and you don't see your Defender exactly there because it's just hidden around a corner or something, your heart skips a beat. You just think it's been stolen. And I've lived with this for 13 years and I really want to get my Defenders away from the public highway or not be visible from the public highway. That's a real prime concern of me. Remember, it's only paranoia if they're not out to get you. So I really want to get my Defenders away that they cannot be seen. Basically, if Google Street View can see my Defenders, that's not acceptable. I want them to be hidden away most of the time when they're not being used. So those are my two main requirements. So having the garage in this part where it's got a restrictive covenant also is quite close to the road there. It also means that the door would probably be leading out, and if I want the Defender out in front of the door, for example, then it would be seen from the public highway. So really I want to bring it into here, put the door at the side so that people can't look directly into the garage and see what I've actually got inside of there. That's really what I'm thinking about with the design. I've been playing around with the positioning quite a lot, so let's go over there and have a more detailed look. So the markings I've laid out, basically from this stick here, being the front, to that stick over there at the back. I've gone for 9x7, which is based off that tent being 6 meters and deciding that I want an extra meter on the depth to be able to get 2 vehicles in, and then 9 that it's basically 3 bay garage and I can get 2 vehicles in with extra space to be able to rebuild a vehicle. A couple of months ago I went and played around with the positioning by actually getting the 2 defenders out in that kind of space. So let's go and have a look at that now. So this is 9x7 from the edge there, pretty much following the edge of the short grass. 9 meters that way, 7 meters to that marker there. This is how the defenders are laid out. So if you imagine a load of benches or a bench or something down this side, there's enough space here to walk, which is good. And then same on this side, enough space there running down this side. So even more space on this side if it's running through this way. And then also space enough to get a defender parked up back to here, so we've got a fair amount of space here. And at the moment this one is, and bearing in mind this is external width, so there's going to be wall furniture and stuff, width of the wall's going to bring it in a little bit. And then this is how they sit in relation to each other here, so you can actually park them up and you can still open the door on this one. Tons of room. So the idea being with this one, with a T shape, is that if you have the ridge line going this way, then it's a lot easier to be able to put it in a lift and get the defender up, because it's going up into the ridge line. And then the idea will be to have a 5 meter, basically a double width, a bit more than a double width door on this side. So there's the marker for the door. That's how far the door would come up on this side. So could you get this one out? If you reversed it back a bit, you'd probably be able to drive it around, but that's what I'm going to test. But in any case, if they were on wheel rollers, you could push it to the side if you needed to, and still be able to get them in. I've measured this. It's basically 1.8 meters width of a Defender without the wing mirrors. You'd be able to park them even side by side on there. So this is a really good test. I'm really happy with this size actually. I was erring whether you need to go 8 meters wide or 10 meters. If you're actually going to go to the effort of making a garage. So there, off in this direction over here. So you can imagine this could all be workbenches. In reality, the garage is going to be shifted more over that way, but there's a big mound of stuff there that would need to be moved. This is the flat area. I think what I'm going to do next is measure how they sit next to each other. There we go, side by side. Can you believe I did actually manoeuvre it in the space? It looks a bit tight here, but actually, because it goes a bit further back in there, it's easier to reverse in. You could even do a 3-point turn within the garage. It feels potential, but there we go. So with that one, you could probably creep out the side here. Yeah, you've got space. You can easily open a door and get in, and the door would probably be a bit further over into this far into the Defender on the other side. And then here we've got that much to the door, so you could shift them all over a bit on the left. And then here, let's move this back. It's about there. So this would be the working area. There'd be a lift, so there'd be a bit of post, probably about there. Another post, probably about there. This has been really useful. I've had to go through a whole palaver with that second vehicle just to be able to get it in a driving state, so I can actually test this. This is a 5 meter garage door, and I know that's where the wheels came, so I'm going to try and reverse in and sort of parallel park in through this gap. I'll take the tape measure away. actually no palavers. Came in there, came a bit wide, so there's the rear wheel, and then there's the front wheel coming in. That's coming really nicely. We've actually avoided the rear door. Loads of space, and we've actually kicked the arse over a bit as well. The challenge with the fact that there'll be a lift probably somewhere right there. So it might need wheel trolleys, whatever they're called, to scoot it over a bit. My original thinking was to try and keep the gate at the back there and use that as an access. But what I didn't like about that was that it would be tricky to then, you basically need to be able to park your vehicle off the public highway before you then go through a gate. So it would make it tricky and start pushing the garage further this direction. It also means that the door is on the opposite side of the house, and I don't really like that. So I think what I've decided to do is push this back into here, enclose that part of the garden, and have the driveway coming out this way. I think that's probably a fundamentally better design. It's probably going to be a wooden garage because they're probably more cost effective than a block garage. It'd be nice to have a permanent structure, but I think that's going to be very, very expensive. So timber actually looks quite attractive, I think. So that's the pragmatic decision on that. It comes down to, do I need a lift? I want a lift. I've worked in a pit before in Africa, and pits are less versatile. Fair enough, you can get under the vehicle, but what I'd like a lift for is lifting a body off the Defender, and then also bringing the Defender up to a more usable height. Say, for example, lifting wheels off, working on the hubs. I can do that standing without having to sit or crouch down. It doesn't need to go full height so that I can walk in and out underneath completely, but just so that I can get better access to the underneath would be a lot nicer. Between 2 and 4 post lift, I prefer 2 post lift. The benefits, I think in a perfect workshop you'd have both because they're both very flexible. But I think given limited space, I think a 2 post would be absolutely fine for a Defender. So the question is, how high do I want to lift it? I don't need it to go necessarily up to head height, and that's something fundamental that I'm going to need to work out. So let's go and have a look inside at some of the drawings.
This is the general layout. So this is where the tent is at the moment. You saw me standing here, and then standing here and standing over here. I had played around with a lot of different options. If we take this garage here, originally I was thinking it would be here, with the road being over here, and access this way, and then maybe turn it that way so access comes around and in, or maybe coming in the gate and having the door around the outside, or having it back here and then coming in the gate and having like a parking area before driving it in there. I think what's become most acceptable is shunting it over into this corner and having a driveway out. This way seems to be most practical. I went through a lot of different configurations. I started doing this designing on the computer because you can make adjustments very easily. Lots of free software out there, and really, ideally you draw this in SketchUp or something like that. I just really don't have the time or motivation to learn another piece of software to do something. So I've just been sticking with pencil and paper really, and then having some little cutouts, scale cutouts of Defenders, this being the bonnet basically. And then working out, how would you align these within the space to make it work? I had been doing them online and trying to figure out, can I get them side by side? How do I get them side by side? And working with a lift. And naturally, basically the roof area, you don't have to worry about the bonnet, but the roof is where you need to have the clearance above. So if it was having, sitting them like this, where would the clearance need to be on the roof? If you started twisting it, and so it was easier to drive into a lift at a diagonal angle, would that be okay? But actually you'd need more clearance compared to it just being at right angles like that. And that's where I already kind of settled on this situation, because it's a lot easier to bring, well, this is the narrowest part of the roof that would need to go up into the eaves. So I was playing around with this about whether it would actually work. And I think as I've tested with a 5 metre door, I can parallel park in, and maybe it would be a 1,000,000 point turn to get into here, or you could just reverse in and put the wheels on trolleys and shift it around and roll it in. What I also tested, and you saw me testing, was getting these side by side. I wanted to validate that, so you could actually drive them both through, or get one in and wiggle it around, get the other one in and wiggle it around that way. the lift, where the lift actually goes, I'm not entirely sure, because you would balance the 2-post lift on the front and rear radius arms. It's about there. Maybe you could shift the lift that way a bit. That's something I don't really know. I'm just going to have to work with that. If I'm wanting to lift the Land Rover up into this space, or really it would be end on in this alignment, but we've got the height here, and for the given width, you could go up into this height potentially, but then it depends on the thickness of the roof, obviously. So then we've got to go a step even back from that and figure out how high do I actually want to lift the Defender, and what are the key measurements involved here. So I've gone for the maximum you would ever want to lift a Defender, which is basically head height underneath the vehicle. Now this is my head height. I'm about 180 centimetres tall. So I've put the wheel centre about 1.7 metres off the ground there. The critical dimension is the bottom of the chassis rail, not the bottom of the wheels, to be able to get underneath. So with this, my head would be around in where the rear prop shaft is. You could work on the transfer box quite easily. And then to be able to work on the wheel could sit around 1.4 metres here. So it's really in that kind of range. Where would you want the vehicle to be? Anyway, so then taking the critical dimension 1.7 metres to kind of around here, the lifting height of the vehicle, the lifting height of the lift, that if you were going to buy the lift, you would need to know this dimension to the bottom of the chassis rails, because that's where it's lifting from. But then, of course, we've got top of where's the roof going to be? That is 2.1 metres is the height of the Defender, standard Defender with no lift, from the bottom of the wheels to the roof. Therefore, it's now 3.4 metres to the top, fully lifted. So with that dimension, 3.4 metres on here is about this point here. So ridge height's important then for basically for planning how high is the ridge going to be, but also eaves. Now, in terms of the height, we know the height that the vehicle would be, and we know the width of the vehicle, and you've basically got the ridge line here. Now, our walls are basically fixed at 7 metres. We've decided on that. So you either raise the ridge height by opening the roof, or raising the ridge height gets you more opening at the given height, or you bring the eaves up. So you have a shallow angle. So you've got to balance this between, what is the angle of the roof? Somewhere between 20 and 45 degrees, potentially, given the space you need to have at a certain height here. This is all getting a bit complex for me. So really, and because I need to know this for planning, I think I'm going to hire an architect to help me with this. As you can see, doing this all on paper and using scale cutout models and stuff is not really going to be appropriate, because you really don't want to make a mistake at this stage. If it's too tall, that doesn't really matter, but you certainly don't want it too short. I would ideally try to make it as short as possible. I don't want it to be an overpowering building. Yeah, but this is the other reason why it's not going to have planning. It's going to have to be over, I think planning's or permitted development is 4 metres or 3.5 metres, something like that. But certainly ridge height, I think, is 2.5 metres. This is going to be more than that, because I want to be able to drive a vehicle in. I want the garage opening to be 2.5 metres. That's basically so you can have a lift and a roof rack on a Defender and still be able to drive in the garage in future. So the eaves height has got a minimum, I've put there 2.75. One of the issues is I have contacted timber frame garage suppliers, and it's essentially a 3-bay garage, but I'm going to use it with 2 vehicles. What those suppliers have stated, their designs are, they have a 3-bay garage with joists running across like that in the 3 bays. I don't want that. I want that one basically removed, and potentially that one removed. That's optional. And they've said I need a structural engineer. So that's one thing that is going to need to employ the services of someone more professional, is to figure out how we can design the roof so that it doesn't need these joists across. Although the decision remains, pragmatically, how high do you actually need to be able to lift it? This 3.4 is when you want to be able to walk underneath. I could lower the whole roof line potentially by just having the wheel, or the centre of the wheel, around about chest or waist height. That would be enough to lift the body off the vehicle, body off the chassis, but also allow you to work on hubs and brake discs and that kind of stuff at a good working height. So it's kind of whether I want to be able to walk underneath the vehicle. Mike on Britannica Restorations, he lifts his up probably to about chest height, and then he's got his little trolley chair he goes around underneath with, which is practical, and you get to sit down, so you don't necessarily need to stand up to get under the vehicle. But these are going to be key questions. See what the architect comes out with in terms of height. Go from there. If anyone has a lift in a garage, please leave comments below on the dimensions of your garage. You know, does it need to be head height to the chassis, or does it work in most situations pragmatically by having it generally lower? Let me know in the comments.
Anyway, so that is the plan for building my not dream garage, but garage that is acceptable in terms of time, money and space. At least allow me to kickstart some of my ambitions with my Defenders. So subscribe, because this is going to be a journey that could take, I'm hoping within a year it will be finished. I don't know. I think the actual planning process and the figuring things out and finding suppliers will take longer than the actual build itself. But anyway, subscribe and you might see the end of this garage being built in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.